Welcome back, everybody. Fixed Ops Mastermind, powered by OEM Interactive. We are excited to bring you a show about PR. And what is PR? It's public relations. And these two experts, Jim Leman and Laurie Halter, are here to walk you through it all. And so you can watch this show and walk away and be a PR expert and ready to jump into the field. Jim, Laurie, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks, Dave, for having us on the show. We're looking forward to it.
All right. And so the show is going to be broken up into three segments. First segment, what is PR? Second is, what does effective PR look like? And third is the future of PR. And so what are the key responsibilities of a PR professional within automotive? Jim?
Well, public relations as a broad scope is, and Laurie and I probably approach this different ways, but we're responsible for taking communications and messages from our clients and communicating them to an audience, in this case, retail automotive dealers. And the message we communicate are for lack of better words, the opinions, the positions, the problem solutions that our clients provide to car dealers. My niche in particular is the writing side of PR. I come up from a strong newspaper writing background. So the PR I do is developing position papers, articles, documents that explain how a technology works that might answer questions for car dealers. And so I package those in a credible, believable way, but also weaving in my client's message through that. I come up from a newspaper background, so I tend to be less promotional and more educational and to the point. How does this solve your problem?
Very well said. I would agree with that as well. And I think one of the interesting things, this may be going off topic, Dave, so I'm sorry if this, but I think what we're seeing with communications now is it really is changing. I think Jim can probably attest to this. And more it's looking like content creation for thought leaders and which channels we put that out through. But Jim is absolutely correct that at the very center of public relations is the content. And I would also add the relationships with editors, reporters, even going as far as like event planners to get people into the right events at the shows, awards, really just kind of knowing the right people to get to at the right time to create the best, solution or best outcome for your clients.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the show is I think a lot of times in the greater scope of the world, people think of PR in that crisis PR, right?
Yeah.
Or that the president's PR person who's up there to try and not answer questions or answer questions in evasive ways and things. And that's not really what PR is doing, right? It's not about spin. It's about attention.
Well, it's a little bit about spin, but it's mainly, as Laurie said, it's really about, in this day and age, and she said it very succinctly, it's about thought leadership.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of startup and early growth companies, and they come to me and they say, how can you help us gain market awareness and market share? And the success I've had doing that over the decades I've been in the business is helping them educate the marketplace, in this case, again, GMs, GSMs, fixed ops directors, on what does this company provide that this dealership might want to know about that will help them sell more service, sell more cars, or whatever. And so it's thought leadership, and it's some of it's press releases, Dave, but mostly it's, I would call longer form materials, which are white papers, position papers, case studies, and things like that. One of the challenges I think Laurie alluded to is there's been a trend toward people not reading as much, and you have to deliver these things more quickly. And we're all striving to how we do that more effectively and yet tell the complete message. The darling in the business now is like TikTok, and you can get some things about by that. But I don't know if anybody's going to buy a large technology solution from a TikTok promo. So I think there's a need and a place for all of them.
I have a quick story on that, Dave, that you'll laugh. Yeah. I mean, when you say PR, I remember when I was in college, I was in journalism. I wanted to be broadcast journalism really bad. I was like interning at a broadcast channel. And one of my favorite professors who I'm still in touch with was like, you need to go into PR. Public relations is where you need to be. And at the time I said, what? I would never spin or create smoke and mirrors for a product I don't believe in. So like, I think you're right. Like that is absolutely for a lot of people, the thought out there on PR is like, you're tricking people into buying, a product or service. But as Jim said, I think it's really our job to like bring out the best ways that product or solution can help the overall audience that we're targeting. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
the audience, the dealers are too savvy. And look, they realize if there's a product with a company's logo on it or whatever, they know that this is a quote unquote a marketing piece. But you still have to deliver that in a way that isn't overly promotional,
Yeah.
that is factual, has integrity, it has character to it, and then they'll buy it. But they know they're not reading the Wall Street Journal here.
Yeah. And that, Jim, that's a perfect lead in. My second question is, how does PR differ from marketing or advertising within the industry?
Laurie, I'll let you take this one.
Okay, I know this well because I bet we both deal with this, Jim. So we run into this often because a lot of people combine marketing and public relations. And the best way I know how to describe it is marketing is any activities that are going to create lead generation and fill your sales funnel. PR is more thought leadership, education, and getting your name out there in that thought leader, creating engagement with your clients primarily through content, whether that's video, like Jim said, press releases, case studies, white papers. It's more of, I tell clients of ours, I'm like, if you're looking for lead generation, PR is not it. It's not it, right? But if you're looking to create yourself as a thought leader in the space and someone that people come to and rely on as the leader in content and information in this area, that is public relations.
I think that's a great distinction, Laurie, because I'll say it this way. Public relations, by the nature of how it functions, is a long-term play. We're trying to influence opinion, change opinion, create a culture, and it takes a while. In fact, I was talking to an advertiser the other day about doing some things with one of their periodicals, and his comment was, don't do. We're looking at doing some banner ads that were lead generation. And he had a good point. He goes, don't do that until people know who you are.
Correct.
I'm not going to click on something if they've never heard of you. So the PR part of that was, let's tell a lot of stories through that media to get people to understand, A, that there's a company out there named Dave Foy, and this is what Dave Foy does, and this is why you need him. And then people start clicking on the marketing side. But anymore, it's hard to know, I think, anymore, Laurie, where the PR stops and the marketing picks up, or where they've kind of just flow back and forth, but you have to manage them differently.
Absolutely. And if you're doing it well, you don't know the difference, right? If you're doing it well, to your point, if things are educational, and it's like anything else, if you're giving rather than receiving, in this case, giving educational information that helps the end user with something in their business, it's always going to be a better result than taking. So that's exactly what we're talking about here.
Excellent. I love that. And as you said that, Jim, about telling the story, because nobody's going to click on the banner ad until they understand the story. I was thinking back to there's other well-known companies now, right? That you don't even think about and you see their marketing, but they've told you a story all along, right? Yep. Coca-Cola has told stories all along. They really don't come on and say, you should buy our product because, right? They're just telling you stories.
I'll tell you 2 companies in automotive that I started with and launched and are now that way is LotLinks and DealerOn. I remember way, way, way back with DealerOn, both these companies realized that you start with the articles, the press releases, the information first, and then the name recognition comes later. So those are 2 just real quick that I can think of that did it that way.
Yeah, and often when they're startup or early growth companies, they don't really have the financial bandwidth to spend on advertising. Mm-hmm. And it's been traditionally, well, let's see what we can do with raising awareness by telling stories. When I say stories, I don't mean novelettes or anything like that. Yeah. Who we are and what we do and reaching dealers that way. And that's a very effective way to grow brand awareness and word of mouth, which is always very, very valuable as a marketing target.
Yeah. And that's what we try to do here, right? When we bring on guests, and Laurie and Jim, you guys have both brought brought guests to the show. We want to be able to help tell those stories for people, right?
Yep.
We want to help understand or help people understand what the stories are behind the brands.
Right. Exactly.
Well, if I could just jump in, Dan, Dave, I think that's a good segue because our audience is car dealer people, and they're going to wonder, well, where does PR fit in with my car dealership?
Yep.
And you actually said something. I'm not going to. I've got it here. It was on some other broadcast network, but you said, which I'm going to get to. You said the dealership across the country have been great in their communities over the years, right? Sponsoring the little league teams and popular football teams and things like that. We've got to do more of that outreach. It's not just about sponsoring a team. It's actually about getting involved with the youth and showing them the career that is here. So, I think the message for a dealer marketing department or the GM is how do we get involved in the local community? How do we use public relations here to raise our awareness? I had a dealer here not too long ago who knew I had some experience working for food banks. And we were talking about how do we get the dealership involved in working in the community. And the thing we have to keep in mind with that is it may not for a long time sell a single car,
Right.
but it's something good to do. And people get a good impression about the company. And you tell that story through the local newspaper, the radio station. There's a lot of different ways that PR can work for a car dealership. And I think Laurie does much more of that live type marketing PR than I do. So she can probably go into more detail about it if you want to go.
Hey, so
I took you off the track there, Dave, but I'm sorry. I saw a door open, so I jumped in.
No, I love that. I will say one other thing that I've seen that's working well. And Jim, I love your point about TikTok. So true. I've had people talk about TikTok. I'm like, just forget about TikTok, everybody. Forget about TikTok. Sarah Ciasola from like PMPCG is going to kill me. But I think really what we're also seeing, and dealerships are doing this particularly well, the ones that do it well, is telling a story or a funny through social media. And so like we've seen that some people do this extremely well. And I feel so bad. I can't remember the name of the dealership group, but there's one right now that created an office. Like, Dave, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's a Chevrolet dealership. I can't remember it either.
Yeah, but they created like an office, like, retelling of their dealership, and they're doing it extremely well. In fact, I think Automotive News covered them. And they're getting thousands and thousands of likes and follows. So I think the one, and this is probably what we'll allude to when you talk about the future of PR, don't sleep on social media. That's a big piece coming up.
Mm-hmm.
We're already here, not coming up. It's already here.
Yeah. And so the last question in this segment is, and we kind of covered some of them in that discussion, but what challenges are unique to PR in the automotive sector?
Jim, do you want to start with that one?
I guess I can, Laurie, sure. As I was thinking about this, the auto retail market's relatively small. It's 17,000 dealers and all the people who work for them. And primarily our messages are geared toward 3 or 4 people within the organization. So it's small. We sort of know each other. The media that covers this is fairly small. Laurie and I used to know them all on one hand. Now it's down to maybe 4 fingers. But it's so how you identify, but the same struggle is still there. How do we get these messages delivered to a very busy GM or dealer principal or fixed ops director? And how do we do that? And so I think one of the challenges is the same challenge it's been in this industry and a lot of industries. Your message has to be relevant to them. It has to be something that is trending, or you've done your homework, so you know a number of dealers might have this concern. And you package that right, meaning your messages resonates with them. And then you put together a campaign to, my wife always says, when you're a public speaker, you want to get up and tell people what you're going to tell them. You tell them again, and then you're off the stage. And that's kind of what it is with PR. You just continually hammer it away. That's not to say we send them the same article, for example, time after time. We measure it up, we change it up, but the messaging is fairly consistent. I think that's one of the challenges. How do we reach that audience and reach it well? And I'll let Laurie pick up her experience from there.
I think that's great. I mean, you said it perfectly. I think the one thing I would add, and that may be tough for people just getting into PR, and it really works in Jim and I's favor, is the other half of this big time is relationships. So I've had clients before that say, okay, we're going to go try this on our own for a couple months. We'll get back to you. They come back and they're like, no one's even reading our emails. Well, the reason people are reading Jim and I's texts and emails is we have 20 plus years of experience and relationships with these editors, reporters, podcasters. So I think the other big piece that a lot of people forget is the relationships that we have built over our careers with these people. And so I think that's the other big piece of public relations.
Absolutely, Laurie. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I know I get emails all the time of people wanting to be guests, but if Jim or Laurie send me an email with somebody that wants to be a guest, then I know that guest is a valid guest and has something to offer the audience, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that will vet them,
obviously we want to get people.
Right. Yeah, they'll be
go.
trained and be speaking about the proper things they're supposed to be speaking about, right? They're not going to go off on these like random stories.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want the brands to be able to talk about themselves and things, but we don't want. What we don't want is an hour advertorial, right? Nobody wants to watch that, right?
Yes.
So you've got to come with some value there for the audience beyond use my product.
Right. Exactly right.
All
In
right.
fact, I think that's a frustration with a lot of clients. They go, why don't you get our name up sooner? What we do. My tendency is to outline the problem and how it's solved in more of a generic way.
Yes.
And then towards the end, maybe work in the name of this thing. But and everybody wants it up front. And maybe it's a personal preference, but I've always felt that if it smacks as an advertorial, if it smacks as ads up front, you lose people. I'm not going to say they're not going to read it, but that's been my approach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. All right, on to segment 2, which is what does effective PR look like? This segment is brought to you by PartsEdge. Your parts department is the backbone of your dealership and is responsible for nearly half of your total profits, according to NADA. Our system works within your DMS for a hybrid approach that combines the precision of automation with the nuanced decision-making of parts experts. And the first question there is, what metrics, if any, are you guys using to measure the effectiveness of a PR campaign?
Don't we love this question, Laurie, metrics?
This goes back to like marketing versus PR, but we have established some metrics because we've been asked that so many times, and it's understandable. People want to know that what they're buying, they're getting the value for. I get it. I get the question. So our best way that we've created, the easiest way is how often are you getting covered, right? Where are you showing up? Are we getting them guests as podcasts? Are they showing up in automotive news? Are they showing up on Fixed Ops Mastermind? Have we gotten them to the right people? So the way we have started, really the ROI on that is taking all of the coverage they've received, and we'll do this quarterly and annually, and putting a dollar value on it based on if they were to buy an ad in that publication or on that podcast, what would it be? And then showing what they've spent versus essentially the cost of what it would be for advertising. And what we found with a lot of our clients after doing this for annual is they're getting $200,000, $300,000 worth of value over what they're paying our agency. So I think for us, for our clients, that's the easiest way to show this is what you would be paying for an ad in these publications. This is what you've received by us getting you on these podcasts, in these publications, to these events.
That's great.
John Wanamaker, back in, I think, the 1800s, was a retailer in Philadelphia, and someone asked him this question about advertising, and he said, you've heard this a million times probably. He said, advertising, I half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know what half.
Right.
And I think it holds true for PR. But there used to be a whole industry. Laurie's too young to remember all this, but of news clipping services that had retired people in big rooms.
Okay, hold on. I do remember this.
Big rooms clipping newspapers and magazines at the end of the month. They'd send all these to you, and you'd do just what Laurie said. you do the ROI equivalent on it. And,
Yeah.
those services still exist, but I use Google Alerts now, and they pull up wherever my stuff
Yep.
appears, and I use that. But that's a way. I think anecdotally, clients start hearing. I hear this sometimes. We sold this dealer, and when we've tried to find out where they heard about us, they go, "Nah, I don't really know. It might have been in here, 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 here." But they heard about us somewhere, and that's what we try to do. So we hear them somewhere. I recently had a client, an old client, tell me that said I had my tenure was coming up with them, and we knew that, and so I banked a backlog of PR for them, and they've been using that. And then recently it ran out, and the guy I was called the other day and just said, it's very interesting. We used up all your backlog, and suddenly our market fell off.
Yeah.
That was a big endorsement,
Right.
Wow, okay, I'll take that. So that's what happens. There's something, I always tell clients, I said, you know who you are, and your mother knows who you are, and your banker knows who you are, but the market doesn't know who you are.
That's right.
And if you don't invest a little bit to do that, next year, still nobody's going to know where you are.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of how the ROI is calculated.
Yeah, absolutely. And to just real quick piggyback on that, exactly right. Like what we tell oncoming clients is we say, here's the goal. We want this to be a steady drumbeat of news. So within 6 to 9 months, what I want you to hear from people is you seem to be everywhere. We want them to read something on a website, go to a show and see that person is a speaker. They've just won an award. They see their post on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden it's like, what is happening? You guys are all over the place. That is the ultimate goal. Like, Jim, is this idea that
very well said.
Everywhere someone turns, they're reading about their company or their leaders.
Yeah. I never knew you were that big. Well, we're not, but we've got good PR people.
But they're not. They just have a really good PR firm.
That's exactly it.
That's right.
All right. And so Jim already had a quote, but the mastermind's quote of the week is, if I was down to my last dollar, I'd spend it on public relations. And that was said by Bill Gates.
Very nice. I'm going to start using that. That's going in the proposal.
Me too.
That's a good endorsement of PR there, because his company's done okay.
Doing pretty well.
All right. In your experience, what are the key elements of an effective PR strategy?
Do you want me to take this one first, Jim?
Yeah,
or you want to?
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked to each client. We say our PR is essentially built off of five to 6 pillars. And that's at the top of that is everything we're talking about, content creation. So that includes ghostwritten articles, that includes white papers, any of those things. Then press releases, and press releases, there's more to a press release than just writing and putting it over the wire. That includes pitching it to the appropriate people so it will get into the appropriate places. Speaker submissions are huge for events. Speaking at events is a big piece of what we do for our clients. Pitching, so that can be anything from podcast, getting them on podcasts as guests, getting them speaking to someone at a media outlet and getting them interviewed for that piece. And then the final, and we just added this a few years ago, is LinkedIn. We create a lot of social media content. And the reason we started doing that, we're not a social media company by any means, but you've got to find a way to amplify all of the good news that's coming in and send it out. And so I think really that awards, speaker submissions, content, pitching, which includes interviews, and that social media element are what make for a good PR program in our agency.
I really can't add to that, Dave. That's a good strategy. I would say, but I'm going to add 3 things, and I think Laurie would see this. I'd say here's part of it. You have to know your target audience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have to know your client really, really well. Understand who they are and what differentiates them. Do a deep dive into everything they currently have, everything they've ever written, whatever, and just absorb it and talk to their people. And then think through what the message should be, maybe not necessarily what they want to communicate, but what you think the audience wants to hear, and how do you package that? those decisions are later down the stream. And then I would say you repeat, you repeat, you repeat. And
Yeah.
Laurie said something I think is important when she was talking about moving content to like LinkedIn. We may do a product, I'll call it a product or a project for someone like a white paper. And the idea with that is I say, this isn't just a white paper. That's what it looks like right now in this package. But this is also 3 articles for the press. It's 5
Right.
blog posts. It's 7 little hits on LinkedIn. And oh, by the way, maybe some of this copy is for an ad somewhere down the line. So you help them amortize the expense of that over a period of things. I think
Mhm.
those are all good parts of a good PR strategy.
Yeah.
That is such a good point. The multi-purposing of content across the various things you can do is
Yeah.
huge, huge.
Yeah. Jim, one of the things you said in there in the middle, your second tip, what they want to say versus what they should be saying, right? That's I think that's a good delineation of what you guys do, right? Because what the founder of a company thinks they should be saying to the audience, and you guys being out there in it,
Yeah.
I'll bet a lot of times don't align.
It's almost never what they should be saying, right, Jim? Like what the owner wants to say and what they should actually be saying is almost never the same.
Here's an ideal client. They come from a sales marketing background and they understand what you're trying to do. But the reality is in this business, most of the clients who are in need of our services come from a tech background or a financial background.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really know how to take what their system does. Well, they do know, but you have to back them out of the internal mechanisms of it to get to, well, why would someone want this? What does it do for them? In
Yep.
terms of, well, not that it's faster than the other guys, that might be important, but let's figure out a way to say that. So, and you see it with financial people too, often is you have to help them take a step back from where their strength is and say, let me take what you want to say and let me package it the way I think your audience needs to pay. Sometimes we don't hit that right, but usually we can. And sometimes you have to push back at strong personalities.
Yes, this, as we all 3 know, this industry is full of strong personalities. So
What?
I think exactly right.
I've never met that, Laurie. What are you talking about?
There's been, and I was going to add that the mark of a really good PR team that really cares about your company is if they push back in those ways when they need to, because part of our job is saying that's not going to hit the way you think it's going to hit. And we need to change that messaging before it goes out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that comes with the experience, right? The experience of being there and understanding it, like, and being secure in your talents to know, I have to push back here for you. Yes, I understand you're paying the bill, but you're paying the bill to have me do a certain job for you.
If you're using groundbreaking or never seen before, guess what? Cut that out immediately.
And sometimes it's just that the guy just phrases it wrong and he's in love with it, or the woman, whatever whoever the CEO is. And you just have to say, let's consider this.
Yeah. Cut down on the flowery talk, guys. Let's just get to brass tacks.
Get to the point. Right? Get to the point.
Yeah.
All right. Can each of you share an example of a successful PR campaign that you've worked on?
Well, I can, but I'd love to hear some of Laurie's.
Well, I'll say like some of the, like I said, Lot Links dealer, and we've worked in this industry over 20 years. So we've launched a lot of really successful campaigns. Quantum 5 is one that just recently. So I think, successful campaigns for us is, like I said, at the end of the day, I love a CEO coming back to me and saying, we've got people saying that they see us everywhere. And we've got people saying, what have you done? Last year, we were working with Petra Cares, Arnold Gasita. He's a wonderful person. He's got a foundation called the Petra Cares Foundation. They were named as the Automotive News Vendor of the Year. And Dan Shine said this came very much so from you highlighting all the work that they've been doing within Petra and Petra Cares. So I would say probably a most recent one is that, like, if we can get through our work, our continued cumulative work, a company mentioned in Automotive News as the Automotive News Vendor of the Year, that to me is a big win.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jim?
So probably the most recent of mine, I won't name the company, you'll probably know who it is, was a young reconditioning software company, came to me in 2015 and said, we've got a pretty good product, we think, and we've got some people using this, but we don't know how to scale up our awareness in the marketplace. And you were referred to us by somebody, so what can you do? And I told them what I do. And so it started off with a lot of awareness building through articles and, placements in Automotive News and other places like that to get the market talking about them. And we did that consistently for probably 6 years before their bank was enough to provide some advertising, which helped. But also for this client, so our approach is often this was sort of a new idea coming into the reconditioning business. So let's educate the market about what this is, how do you use it, what does it do for you from an ROI perspective. And one of our first things we recommended them to do after I'd worked with them a couple of years was to do a book on this, a best practices book. And that ended up being 5 books. And at the end of that, I was like, okay, I think I'm done telling that story. But it worked really well for them. And dealers would call them up and said, I read your book, come talk to me. That was very successful, but it was largely I've always said to my clients, we need to tell the market how they're supposed to think of you. You may be 2 guys in a garage right now, but that's not how we're going to go to market. And we're going to talk like you're already whomever. And Laurie will attest to this too. That's how you start talking about it. So I've had customers tell my client when they finally realized maybe how small they were, I thought you were this large organization. Well, we are really, but so it's changing. And I don't want to say we're blowing smoke and mirrors. We're not. We are creating a perception, and that's what PR is about. Let's create a perception of who you want to be somewhere down the line. Just because you're here today doesn't mean 2 years from now, this is who you're going to be. So let's talk about today, who you're going to be in 2 years, and we'll go from there. Dave, I see you're smiling. Either you're not buying this or you're going, yeah, I've heard that before.
I absolutely love it. Jim, I've been doing this. I've been doing the Fixed Ops Mastermind for over 5 years.
Yeah,
I understand the long game and telling that story. That's
Perfectly said. I mean, that was perfectly said. That's exactly right. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, our stat of the week is PR-driven social media campaigns for automotive brands see 60% higher engagement rates compared to standard advertising posts. And that is from a 2023 Sisson study. That's
Jim,
a
do we
large
need to get
number.
Dave Foy on staff at both of our firms? You're finding all these amazing stats and quotes. I'm like, well, hey, next up, hire Dave Foy for my firm.
There you go. There you go. I am available to help out. And so, and with that stat, that'll take us into the segment 3, which is the future of PR. This segment is brought to you by Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated, family-owned and operated claims management service based out of Denver, Colorado. They currently process more than 100 million in warranty per month. Right, so now you guys get to be futurists and hang out with Elon Musk.
Please
what
no.
Emerging trends do you see shaping the future of PR for automotive?
I'll go, Laurie, and you can fill in.
Okay.
Okay. I had to put this hat on my head for quite a while to kind of look at that. I would say this. I'd say that AI is becoming huge. I don't like it for personal reasons, but I have to admit there's been times I wanted to find something very quick, and I let the co-pilot use that. Um, Being rather old school in terms of my training and my background, I got into this business because when I was in high school and college English, I loved to spend time in the library and research, but I didn't want to be a librarian. I didn't know what else to do with this until finally I learned in junior grade of college, the world needs writers. How do you think magazines get together? Oh, okay. The bulb went up. So I've always liked doing the research part of it. AI is a great tool for doing research, and it can go deeper faster, but I'm not sure it sometimes has the filters to filter out. I don't want to say the fake stuff in it, but when you're doing research for a client, you need to filter that through for the relevance for their business. And you have to understand, is this meaningful or not? I'm afraid that because AI is so easy that we're going to slip into AI research and we're going to plug it in as reality. So I think if I was going to suggest to someone to go into PR right now, I'd learn to take a look at AI generated content with a fine tooth comb and understand what's reality and what's not. Because my fear is with that, we're going to get a lot of drone sounding articles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good future. It's easier. I think some clients are going to go, why do I need Jim or Laurie if I can Google this? And I think that's being done. But that's been done for decades. And Laurie, you can attest to this. You present a proposal to a customer to write something, and they'll look at the price and they'll go, my daughter's a graduate in English at IU. I think
Yeah.
she can do that for less. Okay, have at it.
Yep.
9 times out of 10, they're back. And that's a little bit like modern AI, I think. So I think those are some of the trends. Um, I'm concerned a little bit about the narrowing of the media channels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when Laurie and I started in this back a few weeks ago, there were quite a few periodicals in which were seeking content.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much easier. I don't know where easier is not the right word, but we had a broader span.
Correct.
Now there are very few. A lot of them have gone to, we'll put your content in here, but it's going to be called sponsored content and you've got to pay for it. And
Yep.
Yeah.
I kind of realized with that, and I just said, okay, I made my peace with that. And in some cases, that's still a valid way. Publications like Automotive News always seek a good story.
Yeah.
Um, Laurie, I'm that's about as far as my telescope will look.
I think those are big trends. AI, I like you talk about the narrowing of the industry, the opportunities. And so this is kind of, I alluded to this a little bit in the first question, but really creating where I see PR is going is helping our clients figure out how to tell their story, like you're saying, Jim, well. And really, the world is becoming a place where everyone can be their own thought leader. So what are your personal channels that can be used to tell those stories? So here's a quick example. We went from getting content and articles in a lot of the publications 10 years ago to it is now becoming, let's put this on LinkedIn as an article.
Yeah,
let's do
right.
a YouTube video for you on your own personal page about this.
Yeah.
One of the things we're starting just in the next couple of weeks is we're going to be interviewing each of our thought leaders in each company for an hour and then clipping that up and using that across all of their content. And so what I'm seeing right now, this will probably change within the next couple of years, but is this enormous opportunity really for anyone to become their own media publishing company, if you want to think about it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really feel like our role in that is figuring out the story you want to tell. What is the point of view you want to have? Who do you want to talk to in the space? And what do you want to say that will make you a thought leader? And to Jim's point earlier, just saying like we're faster, that's not going to cut it. You need to have a very specific point of view. And then what are the individual channels you have to put that out? Because we are seeing a narrowing of media. We are seeing video becoming more and more important. Today's generation does not want to read things anymore. They want quick, they want fast, they want to scan, they want to watch a video on it, they want to watch a 30-second TikTok. And so it really is a matter of how can we take all this content that Jim and I used to disseminate across media and now figure out how do you individually create yourself as a media publishing company. What do you want to say, and where does that message need to go?
Yeah, very well said, Laurie. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's great.
AI, don't even get me started on ChatGPT produced content. I can spot it in a second. I feel like most people can spot it in a second.
Yeah.
There's some great things it can do for you with prompts, but at the end of the day, you need the heart and soul of a writer to really infuse it with the things that make writing important.
AI is like any other tool that's come along. Like Jim, you mentioned Google, right? When Google came along, you could do the same thing, right? That
Right.
ChatGPT is going to write the article for you, but Google, you could go and you could find it and you could pull it out and steal it if you wished.
Right.
You wish. Back in the day, you could copy things out of the encyclopedia and use it as your own if you wanted to, right?
Right.
They're tools to be used, and they can be used for good or for evil, like anything else, right? But hopefully in the end, they're there to make us better and to allow us to do more for our clients.
Correct.
On the narrowing of the media, that is why we've created all this, right? That's why we have the mastermind out there. That's why we created Fixed Magazine to give that place where thought leaders can write articles and get those articles put in that are not pay for play.
Paid content.
We'll say, right? It's not an advertorial. It's an actual article from a thought leader. And same thing with fixedopsnow.com, which is daily content where, Laurie, we've put a bunch of your stuff up on there. It's a place for people to go because there was that narrowing, right? We were down to very limited places where you could have good content and get it placed and positioned in things.
Yes.
And yes, everybody needs to be doing that on their own LinkedIn, on their YouTube pages and things. But we also still need the other publications, right? Because you can't say, "Oh, I'm published on my YouTube page."
Right. Right.
You
Absolutely. No, we need both. Absolutely.
Well, the print and the digital publications and things like Fixed Ops Mastermind add this thing to the thing Laurie and I do called third-party endorsement. It's a credibility factor that I don't necessarily have if I publish my own article on LinkedIn.
Right. Absolutely.
That may be diminishing a little bit, but that's always been part of the reason. I saw this in automotive news. That carries a lot of credibility.
Yes. Yeah. You're correct.
Or I saw this on Fixed Ops Mastermind. Excuse me.
No, we're using the wrong media here.
You can cut that part out.
That's a Dan Shine's a good friend, so we leave automotive.
Yeah, Dan's a great guy.
I'll tell you real quick. This is so funny. Right before we came on, I had a coffee cup that had the logo of another podcast, and I immediately changed. I'm like, "Ooh, bad form.
Can't have that.
That's right.
Have that." And Dan Shine being a good friend, I owe to Laurie Halter, who introduced me.
Oh, is that right?
To Dan at NADA a bunch of years ago. So
yeah, cool. Dan's a great guy.
I remember that well.
Effective PR right there.
That's right. Relationships, connections, right?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to.
I think this is partly covered, but what skills do you think will be crucial for PR professionals in the automotive sector in the coming years?
I would say video is number one. Video production. Number. Yep. Dave has a son who is very good at it. So if anyone needs video production, talk to Dave.
You can find him. You can find him on LinkedIn. Will Foy, or Net Collective is the name of his company.
And we did not. That was not a paid sponsorship spot.
It was not.
That was a true shout out.
Don't cut that part out. That was really good.
No, I really do believe. I mean, we're joking about your son, but I really do think video and video production is going to be that. It's going to be. It's not even going to be. It is now so important to have in their arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
When I started getting big in video for my clients, probably in 2019, 2018, 2020, you could get away with a 4-minute video and tell your story. And after about 2 years, it was down to, well, you really need to take this video and tell it in 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and under 60. And that's a real challenge.
Mm-hmm.
How do that? How do you chop this up? Especially when you've got the intro and the outgo you got to put in there. So that's a real challenge. And it takes a different approach when you write video scripts. We do some video script writing, and it's a challenge. I would say this about skills. I would agree, video skills. I think whether you're in a dealership wanting to do PR or sitting where Laurie and I sit helping vendors sell to dealers, I think you need to develop your research skills, know how to use Google well,
Mhm.
uh, all the resources on Google. I think it's important too to know you can't copy and paste, or you shouldn't. There are mechanisms now that edit your stuff will tell you right away if you're plagiarizing. That's still a
Yep.
big no-no. I think interviewing skills. How do you pull a
Mhm.
story out of somebody? It's
Yes.
an art, and part of that goes to how comfortable am I? How comfortable am I, or can I be in sitting across from somebody? And where do I start? How do I get this conversation going? Um, Continually sharpen your skills, whatever they are. I think where I sit, and I think I got this from my newspaper background, to have a nose for news.
Mhm.
Um, I can read 14 different stories and find 14 different, totally unrelated to my client, but find 14 angles in there that I can bring him into those stories in a different variation. That's an
Mhm.
art. I think it can be developed. I would say develop digital design skills for doing digital marketing and stuff like that. Um, uh, Learn to write as fast as you can. I think that's important. If you're looking to be in the PR, selling into car dealers, the best advice, or a piece of the best advice, I think that from my own personal experience, I was doing PR for some companies in the early 90s. And then um, my business dropped off and I went and took a job selling Fords. I learned more in that summer selling cars about the lingo, how they operate, what this animal really is, all that stuff. And then when I came back out and said, I'm going to start my business back up again, and I talked to people, they could tell I kind of knew what I was talking about. And I think that was very helpful for me in this role. But even if you're new into PR or marketing into a dealership, learn that business very, very well. The last thing I'd say, these are simple things: be polite, learn to speak well, be energetic, love to tell stories, and love the car business. If you don't love this business, it's a drudge.
Oh, you just gave me chills, Jim. Love the car business is number one. Number
Yeah,
one. You have to love automotive and the people in
Yeah.
it. You
Yeah.
have to.
that is very true. The one thing I would add in there, for both, is learn how to write. You said learn how to write quickly. Just learn how to write,
Yes.
because that's probably the biggest thing that's starting to fall off
Mm.
with AI and generation of content is nobody can take from a blank piece of paper and write an article. Now I won't say nobody. That's unfair. Too few people now are learning that skill of
Yeah.
actually writing and actually crafting a story from a blank piece of paper, from nothing.
I would
Yep.
totally agree. And we've had a number of writers throughout the years because, we always have a nice stable of writers to create the content.
Mhm.
And our clients can absolutely tell if someone is better than someone else. And they're both writers. Both people have come
Yep.
in as writers. But we have clients that will say, no, 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 we want, this person to write this next brief because you can absolutely tell a difference. It's a skill and something that people need to continue sharpening.
Real
100.
quick anecdote: before I went to work for the dealership, and I was working for a big DMS company, I won't name who it is, and some other companies in the space. And I was doing a case study for them. And I was talking to I think it was the general manager, it might have been the dealer principal. And the topic of floor plan came up. He
Mhm.
mentioned it. He goes, our floor plan. And I think he's talking about square footage, like when you're measuring to get a car.
Where the
And so
tables go.
he's talking for a while. He's talking for a while. And finally I say, well, how do you know exactly? And he stops and he goes, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? And I fessed up. I said, well, I thought you were talking about this, but I don't think that's right. He was very gracious with me, but that was a lesson I remembered. I go, so
Yeah,
you never know.
you have to know the lingo. That's for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
All right. Segment 3, last question is, how do you see your role in PR evolving?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, I'll say everything we just talked about, really. I think I started my agency in 2003. So I'm 21 years in now. And I would say when I began, it was really all about getting into the right publications, pitching into the right publications, getting the articles in the right publications. Everything we've talked about in this entire show, we've seen the narrowing of the media, videos becoming more important than ever. Social media has come about in the 20 years that I've been doing PR. It has been invented and matured. And so I would say my role is now just helping them with the trends, see where things are going, see where content is being consumed the most at this point in time, and ensuring that they're there and that they are there with the right message and the right ideas to help explore those new areas. I just think it's changed a lot since I came in. And so I think our role is really understanding where the majority of the audience is now and how to get them in front of those people.
Yeah, I think that's great, Laurie. What I've found and where I see it evolving is the client's need for a good PR person to be their counsel. And Laurie touched on it. But to be able to have the relationship with them to come up and say, Bob, that's not a good idea.
Yep.
Bob, when you talk to him like this, I think you're sending the wrong message. It's even something as simple as, when you go on that video show, you look like you took the trash out yesterday. So let's get you in a tie, because it's all part of the PR thing.
That's right.
We've
No,
all
you're
seen
right.
that. It's counseling on messaging. It's counseling on things like personal appearance, and because we talked before about what's the image of the company you want to project, but the company is made up of people, and the CEO usually is a spokesperson for that organization,
Right.
and so is what he looks like and what he says or she says in step with what the PR and the advertising people are doing for the company, and I tell you, the way you become more valuable to your client if you're able to provide guidance on these intangibles. Because we can find, I'm not saying we can, but you can find people who will write your stuff on Fiverr if you want to go that route. Is it Fiverr or Fiverr? I could never
Yeah, you got it,
Fiverr. I've not had luck there. And then be a cheerleader for your client. I had a client's wife pull me aside one time and says, I can't tell you how much Bob appreciates your talks with him. And often those talks are encouragement, recognition of what they're doing is a good play, or telling him that's not the right way to go. And I think one of you said earlier, you have to lay enough rubber on the road to be able to do that.
Yes.
It helps now that I'm the age I am than when I was 30. So, I play that old man role. And here's the last thing I'd say, and I think this has resonated well with my clients. I literally tell them I love them. And nobody tells people they love each other. I mean, it's tell your spouse, but no, customers don't come up and say, I love you.
Yeah.
And they know what I mean, because I got their best interest in mind.
100%, Jim. I think I talk a lot about, I treat all of my clients as if it's my own business and them as if they're my own family. You'll never hear me talking about a client as a customer. It's always client or partner. Because and there's been people that I've said no to coming on because it's not a fit. Yeah. And so I really think if you start with that, if you really care a lot about that person, their company, where they want to go, the rest will follow.
It's hard to do what we do, Laurie, with a client who it's not comfortable to work with, tends to be, maybe that's the right word.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, we've both been doing this, decades now. So it is easier as you get more experienced and older, quite frankly, to just come back and say, no, I don't think that's in your best interest. Here's why.
And I don't have, I tell them I don't have all the answers, and I could be wrong here, but this is what my experience and my intuition tells me, and you can do with it what you want, but you paid me for some advice, so there it is.
There you go. All right. Well, this has been an incredible show filled with unbelievable knowledge for people to take away, help their own PR efforts, but also just to understand more what the PR professionals that they're working with are going through, thinking about, and looking at to try and help their businesses. Well, Jim and Laurie, thank you so much, and everybody else, we will see you next week.